Welcome to the OFX podcast. I'm Dave Claxton. As always, joined by Bethany. I'm not even doing a funny name today, Beth. No name today.
Oh, we're like in serious
It's
mode
serious
today.
as much as that can be. Yeah, we're true. No name. Well, trust me, I ran through some ideas and names in my head, and it just didn't go out well. It was not a good
No,
idea.
I get it. The
It's a bad idea.
topic.
It's a
Yeah.
bad idea. But we are joined by Olympic race walker, and I don't even want to leave it because I've been reading through stats and like. By the way, we swear on this. Holy shit! Like you've done a lot of stuff. Like anyway, Robyn Stevens, American Olympic race walker, and I was this episode really isn't supposed to be so much about you, but I was blown away by some of the stuff that I've read and what you've done.
Wow, I'm impressed you went in and read.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, actually, just before you came on, we actually asked what Chat GTP had to say about you.
Ah, oh gosh, I wonder
It
what
was
that is.
pretty good, actually. You should look yourself up.
Oh,
It was very complimentary. It was quite good.
oh.
So not too bad. But yeah, like you have American records at different distances and masters records, and I'll be perfectly honest, we have never discussed race walking ever.
Not surprising. It's
But
bigger in other places than the
other
US.
than other than I think the one Canadian guy who I think we talked about during the Olympics or one time mentioned that
You
he
talking about Taylor.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
oh,
Who?
what's his last name? Canadian.
The Canadian Olympic
Um,
race walker.
huh, because they have a smaller they have a even smaller race walk community, but they have some good
Yeah,
ones.
yeah,
We all know each other
I
or
think
know
he's
of
pretty
each
high
other.
level. Yeah.
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 So
Well,
if you knew the name, it's like, oh yeah, yeah,
oh,
we
Evan
heard.
Dunphy.
Yep, Evan Dunphy. Yep. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
he's still competing. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
trust
Yeah.
us, we know about niche sports.
Okay.
That's our
Yeah.
world. We're the
And
niche.
he's the stat guy too, so he probably filled you in on all that too.
Ooh, oh, we might have to talk to him. He likes stats. All right.
Hey, yeah, he's good. He's good. And he's an environmentalist too.
Oh, okay. All right. The point, though, we did this, and I'll tell the background story or the point. Recently, the IOC has come out with a new mandate or a new rule or a change in policy in the way that women will be tested before Olympics. And you know what, Raman, I'll let you explain. How would you define this? What would you define this as to why they do this or what this test would be called?
Well, Kirsty Coventry, she was just sworn in I think December of last year, just going into this year of the IOC. So she's our president of the IOC, and she had announced that the IOC is mandating that all Olympic and Paralympic level female athletes should have the SRY testing to make sure that that trans women are competing in the male category, not the women's category. So that's what's being interpreted. It's not how they worded it. They're saying that they're banned from the women's category, which can be, there's some nuances in there because yeah, that can be triggering for a lot of people because they hear banned and it's like, well, that's not fair. And what they're really saying is they're banned from the women's category, and World Athletics is requiring already. So not all the sports, I just learned this last Friday. Not all the sports are requiring it yet. So as of the IOC saying by the Olympics LA 2028, all women in Olympic Paralympics need to have their SRY tested. Um, the World Athletics made it mandatory last year, beginning last year. So field. And that's the one that's having women do it. And then the IOC is leaving it, well, the World Athletics, they're two different entities. World Athletics is leaving it to each federation to handle the testing however they see fit. That's where the unfairness can come up, like because so I spent some time last week asking around some of my international competitor friends because I retired. I retired officially. I unofficially retired right after I crossed the finish line at the Paris Olympic trials in 2024. So as soon as I won that, I unofficially retired. And then last year, I officially retired in May. But I wasn't competing since Olympic trials 2024. So I didn't know about women already being tested until this year on the SRI. And I found out that In America, the women have to pay $175 for a one-time test. It's through either saliva or blood. So no one's, I saw some other things being listed, but it's through saliva and blood test. And then, but then in Ecuador, all the women there who want to compete in the Olympics and World Athletics and in Paralympics, anything that's hosted by World Athletics, they have to pay $400 US money, $400 for a one-time test. Um, I was coached by a Spanish coach based in Spain, España. And so, I have my Spanish teammates. They are doing it how I think it should be, like the proper way, which is none of the women have to pay. It's covered by their federation. And then I think, UK. So like different federations are treating it differently, but that also means that different sports are going to be treating it differently. So ours is USA Track and Field, and so far we're the only one mandating it because of World Athletics, whereas not even boxing or other sports are yet.
Okay.
So that's
So
So
I'm
I
gonna
have noticed, yeah, some big name British track girls have protested taking the test because they have to pay.
yes.
And just saying they won't do it. And to me, it's completely unfair that we would make women pay for this test that's mandated on them in order to be able to compete when, I
Mhm.
mean, the men don't have to do this. And it is quite costly. And I mean, it's not like a lot of track and field athletes are making tons of money here. Like we know most track and field athletes at the highest level are basically living on the poverty line. So then to ask more of them is just ridiculous.
Yep. And even more so for the less. I mean, most Olympic events are not funded very well, especially in the US. The US is, I think, the only participating country that's not funded by the government. So we're not supported by the government. And then obviously, like, women have less prize purse opportunities. A lot of us are only living on prize purses. I know for my event, in track and field is race walk. We make pennies. Like if you're living, we only get three opportunities to make a prize purse. And if you win each one of those, you make at most, depending on if it's an Olympic year or not, 22 to 25K, maybe 26K. That's it. And then yeah, so and then we also have when, there's more studies on the men athletes than there are on female athletes. We still have to pay out of pocket, most of us, for our own, monthly when we have our periods and menstruations, stuff like that. So we have to pay for those things. So yeah, it's not fair to have. That's why I think I feel Spain is handling it right, the proper way if we're going to proceed with this. Because yeah, then that's where it's not being fair because then now women have to pay, especially in Ecuador, $400. I thought it was bad with $175. I don't know what the British were paying, but I heard that they were paying too. Um, I was waiting for them to get back to me. Germany, they didn't have any race walkers, so they don't have female race walkers right now. So, but waiting for a few to get back to me. I'm also waiting for Willie Banks to get back to me. He's our, representative for World Athletics and track and field for the US. So he was going to get me the statistics. But yeah, it's the way I feel it should be done if we're going to proceed with the testing of the SRY because I'm not an expert on SRY. This was the post that Dave's wife had saw me commenting on, like that brought attention to, there was a guy on there who supposedly is the co-founder of who identified the SRY. And so I was doing a little bit of reading on that, but they're going to continue doing that. I believe the most fair thing to do is to include it in with anti-doping. So we get tested regularly and we have to, and so they're testing us anyway, randomly. They do blood test and urine test. So I feel the most fair way that they can do it, and we don't pay for those tests. That comes from the federation or whoever covers it. Um, so if they lump it in with that, so I spoke with Willie Banks about it to propose this idea because I was thinking that was what they were already doing. And then on Friday, it was illuminated that, oh, okay. Um, Women are paying out of pocket for in several of the federations that they should include the testing in the anti when we get tested by DCOs. So when the DCO comes, they will be trained, properly trained in testing. Because right now there's some problems too. For us, we can order it. They're going to have it so we can order it online through the USATF site, which means it's mail-in, which means nobody's there to watch. So someone could just have somebody else provide a sample and then mail it back. So there's a problem there. Whereas when you have a DCO come and test you, they have a witness there and you package everything yourself. Just like, okay, when they mail it to us, we're packaging it ourselves, but you still need someone to make sure the testing is also legit. So if they do it with the DCO, it'll be covered and everybody's being tested and nobody's singled out because all they have to do is take one of those blood tests and test it for the SRY, and that's men or women. And it's like no one's being singled out. So no one's being judged by the way they look. No one's being charged just because they're a woman and not a man. It's just, and it's kind of, it's discreet. So the only thing is, yeah, there's going to be that small percentage for if a woman or man did not know their DSD, that might be a way they find out. But that's such a small percentage.
Mhm.
And in that case, they would they would have to compete in the men's category, whether or not they're so they would just be a woman, a DSD woman competing in the men's category, which is what they're already doing. That's what they've already mandated. They've already mandated that a DSD woman has to compete in the men's category simply because they have the Y chromosome. So, but that's different from the trans women in women's sport. So in this case, uh, I just think the most fair way that they could do it is if they do the SRY. And I'm proposing this to World Athletics, except for I was surprised by Willie Banks' response because he said, no, we can't do that because testing for SRY is not testing for doping. And while I realize that, because, just because you're a trans woman or trans man, you're not doping, it can be violated by people who dope, regardless of what they identify as. And so, therefore, that's why the testing should be included in the drug testing so that nobody's singled out, it's covered, and everybody's tested. And that way, it's the most fair. That's the only way I can think to make it the most fair. Now, uh, yeah. And then the only thing is over time, because they need to be able to, because they need to be able to do due diligence. So they need to know that whoever's competing in the Olympics, because the IOC is just for the Olympics and Paralympics. They don't have any control over what World Athletics is doing or World Athletics does Diamond League and all these others, World Championships. So, and I can't speak for other sports. I don't know what they call, I can only speak for track and field, but uh, I think that's the most fair, especially in track and field, because trans women and men's, when they say, I can understand how it's triggering when you hear them say for the safety of women or for the safety of our athletes. What's being missed there is it's not the trans women that are a threat to women's safety or athlete safety. That's not at all. It's not even a problem in track and field because we're not an impact sport. We're not like boxing's the only sport I can think of, or anything where there's like where that could be dangerous. But in track and field, it's not an issue. So it's not even an issue. So in my from my position, it's where it's an issue is that anybody, regardless of what they identify as, um, the lowest testosterone that a man has, the highest testosterone a biological woman can't even have unless they have PCOS, which is also rare, though underdiagnosed. And also, most of them probably aren't going to be competing at a high level. And then, as far as men having a lower testosterone, they only have lower testosterone than a DSD woman or in very rare cases, a woman with PCOS. And in both scenarios, a man with that low of testosterone is not likely going to be competing in competitive sports. Usually they have some other health issues going on and going to have a higher they're definitely not going to be in track and field. So I that is what I'm positioning is that it's the most fair because I'm about fair play. I'm about equality for everyone, equal rights. And but equal rights doesn't mean taking rights away from somebody else. And so therefore, yes, trans women, um, if they were to compete, authorized to compete in the biological women's category or cis women's category, then they they're already going to have a higher testosterone than the average woman, which then could open up the gates to anybody saying, well, why don't we legalize doping then for everybody? And that's the part that's dangerous for everybody. So it's not trans women in sports, trans men in sports. That's not what's dangerous. What's dangerous is somebody abusing that or an entity abusing that, like organizations wanting, big organizations want to make money off athletes, don't care about our lives. They just care about what kind of money they can make off of us. That's where it's dangerous because I know it's not proven, but FloJo was doping. She had a heart attack. I mean, there are so many medical issues with doping. That's just so unsafe. And I'm also a well-being coach, so I'm all about well-being. And it's just not, I mean, you have very healthy seemingly healthy athletes who, if they were doping, end up with heart attacks between their like 20s and their 50s, very young, and or they're infertile, or someone like Kara Goucher who did not know she didn't have a thyroid issue. But her coach was doping her on a thyroid medication. Now, she's very open about this on her podcast. That now for the rest of her life, she has to live on thyroid medication because her thyroid doesn't work anymore on its own, and that comes with its own issues. So there's just really huge. That's my biggest thing. So that's what I think I.O.C should be, and World Athletics or any federation when they position this, when they say for the safety of athletes, they should be really focused on um, how things can be something that's well intended can be abused by the people who aren't well intended, and that's has nothing to do with the a trans woman or a trans man. It has everything to do with so the problem, the very big problem that we have of doping in the sport and people wanting to use that as an opportunity to be like, okay, well, to make it fair for everyone, let's just legalize doping. And that's my issue. That's where things get affected. Because then, because like when I watched Olympics growing up, I was fascinated by what the mind and the body can achieve naturally. I don't care what, how, like, I don't care about world records. I don't care about American records. I care about who's the fastest on that day, who showed up that day, who was able to get through their grit that day. Even if it's like one Olympic year, it's like the slowest Olympic year according to the last Olympic year or Paralympic year, like who cares? Like, or the medal counts. Like to me, it's just I want to see what the body can achieve. And I think that's what fair play is all about. Fair play is what they call, fair play is the term for wanting to keep sport fair and equal and also not, there's many ways you can manipulate sport. You can dope, you can change rules, you can, there's all these things that you can do violating your positions. So that was what I'm looking at. When I look at that, I'm like, oh man, they gotta change their dialogue to when they say to protect athletes, don't make it seem like they're protecting athletes from trans women. It's protect athletes from the potential of wanting to use that as an excuse to legalize doping for everyone.
Okay. So that is a lot to unpack.
Yeah, it's a lot of nuances too.
So I'm gonna back it up a little. I'm gonna back it up a little bit to just the test. Okay, so we do the test, and basically, if you are found to have, it's not an SRY gene, but the SRY is an indicator of the Y chromosome,
The
correct?
Y chromosome, yep.
Correct. So you have
Well,
an
the
indicator.
SRY gene is on the Y chromosome.
Yeah, yeah. So
It signals to produce the Y chromosome.
exactly. So if you're found to have that, now then they'll deem you that you have to basically compete in the male category, not in the female category.
Correct.
And the a lot of the drama that arises from that drama is controversy that arises from that is obviously the exclusion. Some people are saying it's transphobic, it's bigoted, it's an attack, it's this and that. Some are saying that it's a danger to cis women, to biological females as well. There's a lot of back and forth on that stuff. So, I mean, that is what it is. I want to talk about one thing. The first thing you said to that I got out of your, they're not first thing, but what one of the things you said out there is that the cost should be covered by the federations doing the drug testing. To me, they are asking for basically a physiological test to be done to prove that you are in adherence with the rules,
Mhm.
which to me mandates the exact same category as a drug test. So
Yeah.
therefore, it should be covered under the same principle because you're not, this is not something that, you guys have put forward. This is something that they've deemed as a rule. And so
Mhm.
that I believe it should be covered, but then and it should just go under that same blanket because you're basically doing a chemical test to
Mhm.
determine if you're participating within the rules of sport.
It's sent to a lab.
Right.
Someone looks
Exactly.
at it. Yeah.
And the fact that what you said there that it's that it's a mail test, like that through the mail and nobody supervises it is absolutely asinine.
So
Yeah.
wouldn't that make all the tests essentially null and void
Yeah.
if
Pretty
no one's
much, yeah. And then
supervising?
it's just a waste for any woman that's
Right.
been charged for it. So
Well,
last year, World Athletics covered the cost because it
mhm.
was a new initiative, but this year they're having anybody who didn't get tested last year has to get tested this year and pay for it. And each federation gets to decide how they're gonna handle that. A lot of them are having the athletes pay out of their own pocket, which imagine that if it's null and void, and then also to have to not only pay something out of your pocket when you're barely getting by financially anyway, to then also maybe find out that, I mean, it's very
Yeah.
rare, but
Yeah,
then
yeah,
to also
it's a
find that
high
out, like I
possibility.
had to pay for that.
Yeah.
So
What
So,
about the accuracy of these tests?
So I'm not an expert on SRY. So I was just telling Dave earlier today, I think it'd be really interesting if that guy is truly who he is. So the co-founder, um, did I say Seafrid? Is Andrew Seafrid or
I think
something?
so.
Yeah, so he was commenting on, replying to one of those, and he said, I was one of the ones who spotted that. And he was saying, yeah, it's one of those where if another guy even touches it in some of their, like, it can make
Mhm.
the test off or take that test off, which is why I was thinking, well, yeah, that's why if they treat it like a drug test, the athlete does all the packaging. Like the DCO is not allowed to touch anything until after the athlete's already packaged it. They're just there to watch to make sure we're not slipping in somebody else's urine. Or, like if it's a male DCO, they have to bring a chaperone and we're watched. Like we have to pee in front of someone, So, and then as far as they have a phlebotomist that takes our blood. So to me, I think and then we package it, and so I think that can circumvent that. But I think it'd be really interesting to speak with him, bring him on, have a panel, like pick his brain because he's the one that knows about how sensitive it is. There are 20, I think that I read there's 25 other indicators though
Mhm.
for like this is not the only way.
So yeah, so
It's just one.
what do you say to the people that are complaining that this is not a foolproof test, that this is not a complete indicator, that like you say, you're going to see a lot of DSDs, a lot of XXYs, a lot of things like that. Because from my understanding, the rule is done like this. You'll receive the test, and if it comes back positive, then in that scenario there'll be more investigation. It won't just be a blanket, you're done. Then there'll be a little more investigation as to if it's a DSD or whatever the case may be or along that lines. That's what I understand. Did you get that
Well, yeah,
same?
that's how it should be. That's
Okay.
how I understand it.
Because when I read the rules, that's what it said that the DSDs are not necessarily. And by the way, do you I'm the acronym DSD. What is that? Different.
This this I don't want to
Yeah,
mess
I
it up.
don't.
It's dysfunctional
I,
sexual disorder.
yeah,
But
basically, it's the rare
disorder.
chance that you have a bit of both.
I will,
Okay, Beth is gonna look it up there so that we don't. So that,
Disorders of sexual development.
okay, there you go.
yeah.
There you go. Okay, so that's what we're saying when we say that. And basically that addresses intersex people and other issues along that lines. So, what do you say to them when they say, "Well, that test is not conclusive, therefore it shouldn't be done or it's not fair"?
Well, if it's not conclusive, then it shouldn't be done.
Yeah.
So I agree with them. Um, but if it is conclusive, then as someone who is about fair play, no matter how we identify, um, then it would just be okay. I mean, this is, this is not a, that's a, it's, I have to be very careful with
Yeah.
general questions. If it
Yeah.
was a specific question, it'd be easier because, like, if you take,
Okay, okay. I'll ask a more specific question.
yeah, because I don't want to be
No, no,
broad
no, no.
because
So
there's
I'll be more
nuances to
specific. I'll be
everything.
more
Yeah.
specific with how I say it. So no test is obviously 100%. I
No.
mean, everything can have error, whether it be through the test itself or through the implementing of the test somebody else handling, whatever the case may be. Would you concur that if this test is done properly, it should be done as in if there is a positive, that shouldn't be an automatic out. It should just be a we need to do more further
Oh,
testing.
yeah, definitely. You never should just take one test. That's not even good science
Yeah.
if you're just going off of one thing, one sample. I mean, they would, um,
So,
I
so
mean,
and
they
so to
should
the
like they could file an appeal, they can
yeah,
file for, they could just like with doping, just like
yeah.
when, like I remember when Houlihan was suspended a few years ago, and it was something with testosterone in a burrito or something, and like there was
We
all this.
we talked about that a little bit before.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, she had to go through a few different trials. So I would imagine it'd be similar to that if someone who identifies as a woman is a woman, has been a woman their whole life, and they all of a sudden are getting told that they have the, you know, the Y gene or something, or
Yeah,
not the Y chromosome, not gene,
yeah.
Y, indicator. Um, they would, I mean, I was thinking about that too, because when I was a youth athlete, I used to not eat anything with poppy seeds in it because they said if you eat a poppy seed bagel or
Me
anything
too.
like that, yeah,
Me too.
yeah, you could trigger it. And I'm one of
Yeah.
those where like I won't even take Tylenol and I get really bad like
Yeah.
menstruation. Like I have one of those heavy, but I won't even like that's like the last thing I would take. I mean, that's one of the things I like about sports though and getting drug tested is just so that I don't have to claim so many things because I also don't trust TUEs unless you really need it. Like, I I try to take nothing, because then I don't have to. I can just say, oh yeah, I just have my Tylenol once a month when I have my period. So like, um, but yeah, the poppy. So ask the question again because like we were talking, I got distracted by the poppy seeds.
No, you actually answered it. You answered the question, and
Okay.
then we went on to poppy seeds, which
Yeah,
clearly is a problem because Beth went through the same thing. So,
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
we're similar age, and I remember sitting in like a drug testing, like they were explaining at the beginning of the track season, like all the things you have to be careful of, and like, even things like cold and sinus meds ha could have
yeah.
ephedrine and
We can't
all
take
these. Yeah.
Dayquil or NyQuil,
Mhm.
which I used to
Yeah.
love NyQuil when I wasn't competing because I could actually make clear up everything. And you can't when you're competing, you
Yeah.
can't. It's too it'll flag.
Yeah. And one of the things they said was a high amounts of poppy seeds could trigger an opiate reaction in your body.
Yeah,
So I was like,
yeah,
well, I can never eat poppy seed bagels again.
yeah, yeah. And I was thinking about that as when I was reading more about the PCOS. So there's different foods that can heighten your testosterone naturally and stuff. Because I was actually reading over it for any um, biological man who's low in testosterone, or a man that's aging that's low in testosterone maybe needs more, or women going through going through perimenopause, menopause, just like trying to maintain what like balance our hormones. So I was looking at that, and I thought, I guess that could be an issue for anyone with PCOS, which that can be, even though I don't think a lot of them are going to be competing at a high level, I think there could be a lot. We're underdiagnosed. So like it's and I think
it's sorry
it
sorry to
could show
interrupt.
up in
Could
track
you
and
just
field.
sorry to interrupt? Could you just define PCOS? Because I some people won't know what that is.
Okay, let me use the exact term. I didn't look that one up because
Polycystic ovarian syndrome.
yeah.
So, yeah. And for when women have it, they have crazy high levels of testosterone, but they don't feel good on it. It's not like,
No.
yeah, it's not, they're super, super tired. Like they have too much.
Yeah, it's not likely that they're going to be competing at a high level because they're in pain, they're in agony. They're
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. It's
But if they
super
are,
painful. Yeah.
Yeah, if they are, then maybe if they got tested and the SRY test shows a Y indicator, then they could protest or something because maybe well, I have PCOS and test me. I just don't think that's going to be really prevalent. I don't know though. I'm not a scientist. I'm an athlete, so I'm a competitor. So.
So, so something that would is a question for the athletes, and this is one of the concerns we hear online, or one of the debates we hear online, is we hear the side of why do you even care if trans women compete against you? And do you think, do you personally think that testing like this needs to be done, or should it be open? Basically, is the rule itself warranted or not?
So in track and field, as far as physical difference, I don't care if trans women are competing in trans men. Well, it did affect, so it goes both ways. So right now it's not fair that trans men are not tested
Mhm.
because only trans women and women, because I was in the 50K. So there was no 50. So in the Olympics, there used to be the 20K race walk and 50K race walk, but the 50K was only for the men. The women didn't even get a 20K until way later. We didn't even have a 10K until like the 90s. So the women were never allowed to have a 50K. And then to be equal, instead of making a 50K for women, they just took the 50K out of the Olympics after Tokyo and made it a 35K. And then in Paris, they took out the 35K and they made it a mixed relay. So the second event was we had a 20K for both, and then it was a mixed relay where it's just one man, one woman, not four, not like four people. So not two women and two men. It was just one man, one woman who did two legs. Um, and that was the mixed marathon relay. That was a debut at the Paris Olympics. But as far as the 50K goes, there was a 50K Olympic trials because the Tokyo Olympics was the last one to have the 50K. And so in 2020, right before the pandemic closures, because in January is normally when the race walks have their longer distance Olympic trials. It's not when the rest of the track and field trials are in June, July. So we had ours in January. Pandemic closure was in March, so it was before that. And I would have placed now the man that took first place, he's a doper, a known EPO doper. So if he wasn't even, and he was trans, he was not even originally US. He had come from, transferred his allegiance from Sweden. And the reason why he transferred his allegiance was, which is another thing I think should be worked on. And someone in Sweden and myself are also working on it, is that when an athlete transfers allegiance, the federation should inform the other federations why that athlete's not allowed to. So that athlete was banned from his country for sexual assault and for doping. So, but our federation, if they were informed, they ignored it, or they weren't informed. We don't know. So anyway, so he won, and then there was two other males, and then me. So I got fourth overall. So I was the winner for the women's nationals. They called it the national. We didn't even get a Olympic trials. And but if that guy wasn't in it, I would have been third. So I was either the alternate or I would have been the third male as a woman, as a biological woman who identifies as a woman, placing third, or if we keep that guy in the front, the alternate, the fourth. So, but I did not get that. Whereas there was an athlete that year named Chris Mosier who competed in the men's Olympic trials as a man in the Olympic trials. She is a trans, or he is a trans man. And the only difference between him and 12 of us women who could have filled, so there's a rule that year there was a rule that the Olympic trials could fill up to 12 spots on the it's different for each event. For ours, we got 12 spots on the starting line. And then it was open to anybody else. But as far as authorized to compete in the Olympic trials, like header, there was 12 that were authorized. And there was a standard that they had to meet. And there was 9 women that were faster, that could have filled those 12 spots, that were faster than the rest of the men. 9 biological women that identify as women. And then there was Chris Mosier, who is not a race walker, heard about this, didn't even qualify. So if you don't hit the mark, but there's not enough people to fill the field, they'll just drop down. So he didn't even qualify. He walked a 6.5 hour, 6 hours plus and a half plus hour 50K. The average that a man at Olympic level is going to be walking under 4 hours because I walked under 4 hours. And then the average that a woman walks is going to be anywhere between 4:15 and 4.5 hours. So
So
here Chris Mosier
two
is
hours
walking
long.
2.5 hours longer than us. And but he got to compete because they didn't have enough men to fill the field. So they let him compete in the Olympic trials, but not the 9 women, biological women. They didn't allow us to compete in the men's trials because we're women who don't identify as men. So that was the only differentiator between Chris and us is that he's a trans man. So a biological woman who is a man now. You know, he's a man. He's who identifies as a man and is a man. So that was the only difference. So if any of us had just said, well, we identify as a man, but we have integrity, why would we do that? So because we don't. So we couldn't compete in the 50K. So that was where there was a difference where that took a spot from actual Olympic level and national level women who were qualified to compete and fill the biological men's field, whereas somebody who's not even at that level was able to use that to their advantage and even had 100. I think he had a six-figure. I don't know if he's still sponsored by them, but he had a six-figure sponsorship by Nike, which none of us have. No, nobody in that race has makes six figures, and the only person who ever did was John Nunn in the US because he was paid by the army because he was in the army. So he made six figures. But the rest of us are like poverty level. So that was the other thing where I'm like, this person's not even national level, like let alone Olympic level. Didn't even finish did only 2K and dropped out. That was their plan. They weren't going to walk the whole way because they don't even do it. So that was where I respect him as a person, but I lost respect for him as a professional because he had an opportunity to champion for us to be in the race, and he didn't because and then the other thing that makes it unfair is the older men that were filling the field. Now they said they didn't have a problem, but men can't control when they start losing their testosterone as they get older. They can't control that, but a trans man can. A trans man can control how much they're putting in. So to a degree. So to me, it's like, okay, so that's again goes into that territory of even though they're not technically doping, um, the indicators for a biological person would be flagged as doping, if we were doing that.
Yeah, so
So
but to me, I would think in a situation like that, he would be on a synthetic testosterone.
yeah,
And being on a synthetic testosterone, that would show up on at a drug test, would it not?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it does. I'm pretty sure it does.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how.
So,
See, that's where
but
I just don't know.
so I have one other question about that. So let's just say that he did not take that spot. Would it have been possible for a biological woman to take that spot?
There was 9 of us.
So what I'm saying,
9 of us could have filled that field because 9 of us were faster than the rest of the men that were
but
in that field.
would they have? But they wouldn't allow that within the rules, right? Is that
They
what I'm
wouldn't allow us because we're women and it's the men
correct?
category. So
Correct.
that's the things that a man pointed out to me was, hey, the only difference between you and Chris Mosier is that he identifies as a man and you don't. So all you guys all have to do is identify as a man. Well, I have integrity and also fair play. And I'm like, no, because I'm not
Mhm.
a trans man. And so therefore, yeah, I could use it for this one time, but that's not fair. Like I'm someone who what's it called? Like not a hypocrite. Like you are
Yeah.
who if you feel who you are, you're not going to pretend you're something else. So Chris feels he's a man, he's a man. I feel I'm a woman, I'm a woman. I'm not going to say I'm not just so that I can compete so because that would be just as bad as other rules being bent.
And and and,
Like
and for the record, he did not say he identifies as a man just to go in the race. He legitimately
No,
is a
he is a
trans
man.
man. He's
He is
living
a
as a
man.
man. That's
Yeah.
that's that's so
He's a man. He was born a woman. He's a man though.
he's just fucking slow.
Yeah, he's just a really slow man. But he's nice. He's a nice
Yeah,
guy.
and that's great. And
Um,
I'll be straight out honest. I actually reached out to him.
Okay,
to
cool.
try to come on. I've
He's
yet to get a response, but
mhm.
I wanted to get the other side of the debate. I don't like the echo chamber thing. I want to hear both sides, and obviously he has um, a direct
And
impact.
he has knowledge that we don't have.
Yeah, exactly,
For
exactly.
example, like I don't know how the synthetic testosterone comes across.
No, but what I
So,
would go to when we go back to personally why I do believe the rule currently needs to be in place, and one of the things is even if it was ever, and we can argue over scientific data and stats and all that stuff. I've gone through a lot of research and I've read papers and whatnot, and there's a lot of misinformation going around out there. Anyway, but I'll leave that as it is. Let's just say, for argument's sake, that a trans woman is able to scientifically prove that their hormone levels that they've eliminated the biological advantage of being born a male. Let's just theoretically,
oh, like
hypothetically,
say that it doesn't even show up because of the
yeah, so that
synthetic.
they've, yeah, so scientifically we figured out a way to do this. So I'm speaking very hypothetically. So we figured out a way to a certain cocktail of gender therapy that takes away conclusively the biological male advantage, and now that puts them on a level playing field with biological females. The problem, and this is kind of what you pointed out a bit with Chris, is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but biological women, their hormones levels fluctuate very much, right? Like
Hmm.
there's a lot of up and down and stuff that goes on.
Especially when in perimenopause.
Exactly.
In
But,
perimenopause.
uh,
So.
and again, I'm way out of my depth here, so I'm not the expert, but this is to my knowledge. However, a trans woman is very much able to regulate and flatline their hormones because it's done through therapy. And so that they can basically optimize their hormone levels, so that itself in itself would be another advantage.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't I don't know. I have a friend that she just went through, she's a trans woman, but she's not an athlete.
Hmm.
I no, all every trans woman I know that I'm close with, like a friend, they're not in a high level sport. I mean, I mean, they do it for fitness, but they do stuff for fitness. But and I would have to ask her, because I do know that there's other things they got to deal with,
Hmm.
psychological stuff,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and then the expenses of
Mhm.
keeping it up, and then for this friend for a while she wasn't passing, as they say, and another friend of ours does pass. And so that's been psychologically really tough on her. And I know that she's spending a lot of money on just trying to upkeep. So I guess that can balance out the stuff. Like our hormones fluctuate. Yeah, they can control their hormones. It's at the expense, though, at a very
Oh
costly expense. But then
yeah.
again, I guess what dopers are doing, they're
Mhm.
paying a lot of money to get EPO in them or however else they do their thing. So that is my thing, is that un, that's why I think no matter who we are, we need to think of what's the best for the whole, not just what our own goals are. Um, because yeah, I mean, working in well-being, it's like I'm not going to say it's easier, especially because I'm not in their shoes. I know how hard it is to be a woman. I don't know what it's like to be a trans woman. I know I've been watching her go through her stuff. For our other mutual friend, she's had it pretty easy. Neither of them are athletes though. I mean, they're not
Mhm.
even doing sports. But I know she's had a hard time. So like I wouldn't say, because there's psychological stuff. There's psychological stuff going on. I mean, I would imagine that maybe it's closer to like some of the hormonal stuff that but it's different. Yeah, it's different. So to me, it's equivalent to because it can regulate their stuff more. Um, Same thing with the other way around, where trans men can regulate how much testosterone they have compared to biological men. That's where, if you think about what's equal for the whole, what can be fair for the whole, the best way is then if you do have the Y chromosome, regardless. Oh, but you're saying synthetic, if they can get rid of that. I don't even know if that's possible.
No, no, they
But
can't. They can't get rid of it.
right
So what
now,
are you?
it's not.
No, 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 no.
Yeah, so right now, until that is until a thing, but right now it's not. So with the
No.
information that we have, as it is now, they have it that then it's like, okay, the most fair thing to do is compete as a woman in the men's category. Unless we create a whole different division, just like we have in the Paralympics. Paralympics have so many different divisions because there's different degrees of blindness, different degrees of amputees, and like so if they did something like that, that would be, and that's been suggested a lot. But to me, the most fair thing, if you're thinking about it, it's the same with the DSD, is like, okay, look, you got this. How badass is that? So position is that how bad is that you're a woman who can compete, who's allowed to compete in the men's category when biological women who don't have the Y chromosome or the indicator for it don't get that choice. So,
Hmm.
like so they don't get to do that. So maybe that's a badass thing. See it as that way. But I would say like the most fair thing is to be like, well, yeah, unless everybody's tested. If anybody's gonna get tested, everybody should be tested.
Agreed.
So that's one, and then it should be through the DCO, so the drug
Mhm.
testing. Even though it's not technically it's not even doping, it's just to see if someone has a Y chromosome. But because people who dope or organizations who authorize it and entities, you don't want to open things up to be more dangerous to where they're like, okay, well, now we have an argument to say, let's just legalize doping across the board, which is very unhealthy for everyone. So that's what I see as dangerous. The other thing is even though it's not a factor in track and field, as things are right now, because you said like fixation, like if we can somehow
Yep.
get rid of
Science changes all the time.
yeah, yeah, because it changes all the time. So if somehow we can get rid of the Y chromosome in a trans woman, and that's a different story. Because yeah, now they're not they don't have the Y chromosome, so they are women
Mhm.
without a Y chromosome. So they should be in the women's category. Because I think that's the only reason why all DSD with the Y that they have to be in the men's category regardless if they're man or woman. So it's purely because they have the Y chromosome. So I think the fair thing to do is, yeah, if we have found a way where a trans woman doesn't have an indicator for a Y chromosome, then yeah, they don't have a Y chromosome. They're in the women's category. But right now they do have a Y chromosome. So as from what we understand. And so from what we understand as things are right now, there is an indicator for the Y chromosome. And that is a huge difference. The testosterone levels in a typical high performing man compared to a typical high performing woman is so huge that for that woman to be able to compete at that level of a trans man with regular testosterone levels that they were born with, we would have to dope. A biological woman would have to dope. Because yeah, you can argue that PCOS could have just as high, but they're, as Bethany pointed out, they're not often going to be the ones competing because they're not feeling good. So,
Mhm.
so I just feel with that, that is the most fair thing because there's other sports, and that's what the IOC are looking at, is they have to have rules that everybody has to equally follow. Whether we can argue if they're doing that, men and women equally, but they have to, by every sport has to equally follow it. And since that could be dangerous in boxing, for example, where it's a physical sport, yes, that's a sport I can think of where it is a physical danger to a woman. If even if there's a DSD that's in there, and or if it's a trans woman, because they already have higher testosterone that's even possible for a biological woman at that level to have without doping. And so in that case, if I was an athlete who is DSD or a trans woman, if I was a trans woman who believes in fair play, I would understand like, yeah, that makes sense because for fair play, even though I'm not a boxer, I'm a track and field runner or jumper or thrower. We got to keep it fair for the women that are competing in boxing that would have to
So,
do, and we don't want to put open gates up to people legalizing doping.
so also you bring up, and you inadvertently you bring up a point, and this is something that I hear online a lot. And again, when you have these discussions online, some very interesting ideas get thrown out.
Hmm.
And so this comes up a lot, and I'll ask both of you, and actually start with Beth on this one. The idea of not having sports segregated by sex and just having everyone compete together. Now, I'll say straight out that in my mind, this is a very bad idea. But I'm going to let Beth, you want to roll first on that?
I've never heard that suggested, but maybe
Oh, I
I'm
have a
just
few
in
times
the
lately.
wrong. Well, I think you're getting into the dark side of these
Very much,
arguments for
very much, very
sure.
much. But I want to,
You're
hey, I want
you're
everybody to
deep
have their say.
diving.
And,
Um, but I
and
mean that's awful then. Anyone born where's how why would a female ever be motivated then to compete? Because you're at an automatic disadvantage right off the hop. Like that I think that's a terrible idea. That's obviously an idea of someone who's either male or not an athlete.
Yeah.
yeah, so what I do here out there is and again, this is and that's why I say strange things get thrown out. I personally think that, 100 years of sport has shown us that, it is what it is. That, I mean, just looking straight at track and field at every event, like the numbers are the numbers, right? But
Mhm.
it gets thrown out there that to say biological men have an advantage is an insult to the hard work women have done. I just, again, I don't
Well,
agree.
they
I
have
think
an
it's ludicrous.
advantage. They have an advantage over. So women are still amazing and incredible at what we
Yes.
do. I mean, what man
Well, this is
ever
why
has to compete?
this is why I ask you too, because you are both exceptional women,
Yeah.
incredible things.
Because, okay, so the thing that wouldn't be fair is how badass women are, and yet it'd be overshadowed by their pure testosterone levels compared to
Mhm.
ours. So either it would again open up to doping, where it's like, oh, well, if we're all going to be thrown in, then I guess women can dope. And then if women can dope, men can dope, and then people are just doping. So that's not good. But as far as like how many men have to show up to a race, and it doesn't matter, like Olympics and Olympic trials, because for us, we have Olympic trials, but the rest of the world doesn't. So we can even get out. We could be the best in the nation and even one of the top in the world, and then not go to get sent to the Olympics because we scratched. Like, I'm gonna mess her name in the long jumper. Is it Tara Davis?
I'll be honest, I'm not sure.
Um, well, she's a or triple jumper or long jumper. She in 2022 scratched at the trial, so wasn't sent to World Championships in Oregon. Yet she was our number one in the world, ranked number one in the world, and she was not sent because she scratched the Olympic trial. So that's something that the others wouldn't have to worry about. But now, not only that, now and then women have less opportunity to make a team than men until Paris. Paris did it where it was like
Mhm.
everything's a relay or equal. But before that, like take the race walk, for example, it would be easier for a man who's not very fast at the 30K, but they have good endurance in the 50K, that now they have an opportunity to make the team in the 50K, and the people who are in the 50K are opting, their competitors that could beat them in the 50K opted for the 20K. So now that opens up a position for them. Whereas women don't have that. We could be really good in the 50K and the 20K, but there's no 50K available to us. But then there's the women that, like maybe we're towards the middle of the pack, not at the top, and then, but we could be at the very top for the 50K, but now we're not allowed the 50K, and then we could maybe even medal in the 50K because the people who usually beat us in the 20K just opt to be in the 20K and aren't very good 50K. So that's something that the men have. So that happens in a lot of different sports too. But and so then on top of that, how many have to show up on the day of with the worst period ever? And some of us get really like I am crawling on the floor some days. It's so bad. Like the cramps are really bad. And I mean, all I could think is I have an ex-boyfriend who went through an appendicitis and he said it felt like he was giving birth. And I'm like, okay, well imagine doing that like every now I can't speak. I've never had a baby. So I was like, imagine having that much pain where you can't walk, but it's every month and you know it's gonna happen every month. I mean, if it's not happening every month, then there's something to worry about too, because you can get osteoporosis and all that. But yeah, no man has to deal with that. So to me, it's like, okay, it's still fair that women are badass. It just gets overshadowed because their testosterone makes it appear as though in some sports, because we could actually I mean, we could probably outperform in some of the more higher endurance level. We have a high pain tolerance. So anything that has to do endure pain, I think women are gonna do a fair, we can probably compete pretty fairly. And then because the science hasn't had as many years and decades behind it as men have, I actually think over time women can start equaling it out. We just, there hasn't been enough science in it. But as far as like the strength sports, the stuff that really require testosterone, boxing, for example, or anything like that, basketball. I mean, because there's women are like super fun to watch. So to me, it over based on the markers that they're looking at right now when they judge like what a great athlete is, it would overshadow the amazingness of women because so maybe they'd have to change what is the markers, like what I don't know. So yeah, it would just be really silly to do that because if if it was possible, we would have been doing that already.
So
Um,
I look at back and I usually use the example of Tia Toomey. And I don't know if you're familiar with Tia Toomey, but she's like the greatest CrossFitter of all time.
okay.
I think what is it, Beth? Eight or nine or 10 CrossFit
Seven,
World
7 or 8. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. She's pretty much if she's there, she's winning.
Okay.
Now, when
I
you
haven't
talk,
heard of her.
no, well, you should look up. She's an incredible
I'll
athlete,
look her
incredible
up.
athlete.
Yeah.
So if you think about what she's done, and where you talk about it being overshadowed, the badass women that would be there, if there was no segregation of sex in sports, we wouldn't know her.
No, we wouldn't know her. We wouldn't know some of these amazing women basketball players that we know of. We wouldn't
Mhm.
know who some of our ultra runners are. We wouldn't know if any of our
You,
athletes. We
you,
wouldn't know who our top women are.
yeah. I mean, by Serena Williams' own admission, we might not know her.
Yeah.
And
I have
and
my thoughts on that though.
anyway, yeah. Oh
I
well,
don't know which one is which, but I heard one of them hid from the DCO, and to me, it's like if you're a clean athlete, you're not
oh
hiding
yeah,
from
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
DCO. So
But that's a different story too, for sure. But
yeah,
I'm
but
just saying. So
there's no evidence.
the concept of not having that segregation is ludicrous,
Yeah, yeah, it's ludicrous.
and just the amount of opportunities that women would be robbed of
But
is
to say that that's insulting to women, I don't know. It's that's what's insulting is that people don't see how we're truly amazing
yeah,
because we have to do a
and
lot.
that is something like I mean, Beth, like we're backers of women's sport and have been all t along a lot of times. Like I can't,
Yeah.
yeah, we're on that side for sure. But it's one of those things that comes up online every now and again. I guess the other thing that comes up there is just do you, and I kind of try to word this properly. Do you foresee a way to make a rule to allow transgender women into the female division, or is that just something that cannot happen at the moment?
I think at the moment, see, this is what doesn't make sense to me from last Friday is I just found out that the only sport that's requiring it right now is track and field, which makes zero sense to me
Mhm.
because the only sport I mean, I keep saying boxing because I can't think of any other one where,
Hockey,
well, I mean, maybe football, but football, they don't mix the
hockey.
women and men.
Oh,
Hockey.
sorry,
Oh,
sorry.
yeah, hockey. Okay. So, yeah, because
Yeah.
there's impact there. So I'm just thinking, yeah, right now for those sports, for the safety, because you can't just think about yourself. You have to think about everyone. That's what equality is. And integrity is sometimes having to make a decision, even if it doesn't benefit you personally. It's the right thing to do because it benefits the whole. And right now, even though it's not a problem in track and field, which, yeah, that's a whole different conversation on why is it track and field the only one doing this is and they said it's because they saw statistics that we have because there's so many different events, we have more likelihood of having DSD athletes. And I'm like, even then we had very few. And then I asked them for the statistics and they're like, oh, I don't know. They just told us that. So they couldn't even give me the statistics. So that's
Well,
what doesn't
we
make
have
sense to
we have
me.
seen it though, where like in 2016, all three medalists in the women's 800 were all DSD athletes.
Oh, were they?
Yeah.
Interesting. I only knew about Castor.
Well, the two women behind her were also DSD athletes. So
Okay. Yeah,
the
that's a
fourth place
problem.
ath yeah, the fourth place athlete was Melissa Bishop from Canada. So it has been largely affected in track and field.
Okay. Yeah. And then in that case, but see, that's not even trans. That's DSD.
No.
That's
Yeah,
different.
that's DSD.
So, because that's where it has to be separated too, is that that's different. Um,
So like
I
so
mean, for me, it's all about fair play. And if you have the Y chromosome, even if you're a woman, you should be competing in that because it's the right thing. It's the fair thing if you think of the whole. then if you have the Y chromosome, you're a woman competing in, I mean, if you're a DSD, so you have two X's and a Y, then even though you're a woman, you're competing in the men's category as a woman because you have the Y chromosome. As far as trans go, which is a different conversation, then in that case, it's we have to look at because of the factor of what's fair with the DSD. If DSD women have to compete in the men's category as women, then trans men or trans women should be like, okay, it makes sense right now that even though we're women, we're trans women, so we have because we have the Y chromosome still indicator that we compete in the men's category because that's just fair to my competitors who are DSD and it's fair to my biological women. Um, Maybe not in the event that I'm in, but and there's other sports where it is because even if it is that, you know. So I think you have to think about what's fair. It's like, oh yeah, could I win this event because I have this advantage? But what's fair? Like you look around, just like with doping, just like with manipulating rules, you know, you have to look at and each case is going to be a case by case scenario, I guess. But for me, I think the most fair thing is either you test everyone for the gene or not the gene, the chromosome, and then the indicator, and it's drug tested. So no one's singled out by how they look. No one's, it's just when they have their blood test, it comes through there. They're packing up everything themselves anyway. Um, then then it's the most fair. And right now, and then no one's having to pay, no one's singled out, no gender has to pay where the other one's not. Um, it's just and then we'll have those where we can file a grievance if we disagree, kind of like if we have an off poppy seed reading or that burrito thing that happened to Houlihan, you
Is
know,
there
like,
a poppy seed burrito? Because that sounds like just the ultimate horror.
you know, I wouldn't be surprised. It's like at those five-star Michelin restaurants, you know, there's things that you think would be horrible and then you taste it and it's so good. So who knows?
Right.
Like avocado pie, it's super good. It tastes like cream. It's better than key lime pie.
All right, Beth, did you have something you wanted to jump into?
Yeah, what if we take away the labels of men and women and we call them with a Y chromosome, without a Y chromosome,
Well, you could
or
do female,
something that sounds a little
female,
bit better than
you could
that.
do
That
female and male,
actually, you know,
female and
that
male.
actually,
But it's
no, because
still,
that they still feel, yeah,
I thought I
yeah.
could. So,
there's still
and correct.
triggers with
So,
that.
okay, because correct me if I'm wrong. So, my understanding was with the gender identity that the woman was the word, and at least in my experience so far, using female has been okay.
Oh, really?
So far, so far.
So
Pardon?
so I don't know.
Female
We need
describes
someone
sex,
on
woman
that's
describes
trans,
gender.
but so is that, have you talked to Nikki at all? Nikki
I don't,
Hiltz?
I don't think so.
Okay. Um, because she's a trans, but she competes in the women. She's a they. They. Sorry, I'm using the wrong they.
Okay,
Today.
I
that's
you
what
know,
we're
don't come
doing our
after me.
best. We're doing our
Yeah,
best.
they. They identify as they. Um, so I think I didn't know that. So I didn't know that so does a trans woman identify as male that's a trans woman? Because I thought that as far as my friend goes, she's a woman. She
Yes,
doesn't
yes,
identify as a man
yes, yeah,
or
exactly,
male.
exactly, because she identifies as woman, so she is a woman,
But
right?
she doesn't identify as a male either.
No, no, but there is still the birth sex basically. So the
But
sex
because,
and gender are two different things.
but I think what Bethany's bringing up is maybe just not call it, just call it the X and the Y,
So
Yeah.
the
again,
XX games
I'm
and
with
the
that.
XY games.
I'm with that, and
Yeah.
I'm down with that. But I have had multiple occurrences where people are not in favor of that due to
Or,
ESDs and stuff like that, and
well,
doesn't come
because of the
with sex.
ESD, we
And
couldn't call it the XY games. We would have to
exactly.
call it the Y games because it's just anyone with a
Yeah.
Y. And then the
Okay.
XX games.
Anyway, so yeah, it's a tricky slope, and especially when you're trying your best to be respectful, because honestly, the rules do seem to fluctuate a bit and change a little bit.
Yeah.
So we're
And there's
doing,
so many nuances. It can be
yeah,
hard because especially when you are like the three of us, it's like we
yep,
are pro equality, pro rights for
yep,
everyone. So we just want everybody to have their rights and feel heard and seen and
yeah, yeah,
have their
and
opportunities.
I want everybody to be able to compete because I
Hmm.
think
Yeah,
sports
because sports
for
is
everybody.
good for you
It's fantastic for everyone.
as long as
I
you're not
am
doing it, it's good for you.
I am one of the people in favor of the what I call the NGS, non-gender specific division. right? We're just basically it's open.
Well, I think that's what the Paris Olympics was trying to show is that
Yeah.
if it's open because what they did was they just put men and women together.
Yeah.
And
And
so then
I
it's like
yeah.
that's the best. I think that's the only way you can do a non-gendered games is it, oh, but then there's that, yeah, then it gets all nuanced because then it's like, okay, then some women would be like could feel like they're getting replaced by the DSD women
Yeah.
for those
It
roles.
still favors, it still would favor the trans woman.
Yeah, it would still favor the trans woman.
And sorry, Beth, were you on a train there and you got interrupted?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, Bethany.
No, no. It's okay.
All right. Anyway, I think
I have a little bit of ADHD, so it's like
welcome to the club.
Yeah.
You're with your people. Um, so I think that's good for tonight, right? We've gone on for a little over an hour. I don't want to keep Robyn too much longer. Um, I do want to say one thing before I finish though. If there is someone out there listening who is a trans woman or who strongly believes that this ruling is wrong and they would like to discuss it and would like to get their points out and be heard in a very respectful environment, in a very safe environment where you're not going to be judged, you're not going to be attacked, where you're not going to be misgendered, is please reach out. We would love to talk to you. I do not like echo chambers. I love hearing the other side of it, and I quite enjoy being proven wrong. So please reach out and go from there. Other than that, Beth, you want to take us home?
Yeah, thanks so much, Robyn, for joining us. It was so nice to meet you. And for our listeners, if you have not heard of Robyn Stevens, look her up. She's a very accomplished athlete, female athlete in this space, master's athlete. So thanks again. And thanks for really just sharing your expertise on it and your perspective as someone who's been at the top of your sport and, had to deal with it a little bit. So we appreciate you taking the time.
well, I appreciate you guys. It's like it'd be interesting, yeah, the more people you bring on, and just to have this open, respectful conversation so that we can come up with ideas that are the most fair for everyone and
And that's all we want. Everybody
hear
wants
all the
to.
sides because we can't, yeah, we can't know until we hear.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Take care.